They're turning toward the children. Captain Narokesh did not say it loudly. He did not need to. Every speaker on the refugee ship had already gone thin and crackling from power rationing, and still his voice reached the whole bridge like a hand closing around a throat. On the forward display, 6 shadows moved through the teal mist of the Orlith corridor. They were larger than stations, larger than cities. Their fins caught the nebula light as they circled the convoy, slow and patient, each one trailing green veins of bioluminescence through the dark. Behind Captain Nero, a child coughed into a cloth that had already gone red twice that morning. On the emergency channel, a smaller voice broke through the static. "Captain," the child whispered from somewhere in the outer ships, "are they here to eat us?" Nero looked at the 18,000 lives scattered across the broken convoy. Civilian barges, school transports, market haulers. Old family ships patched with hull plates from 5 dead worlds. Amber distress lamps blinked in the dark like candles in rain. Then the Veyrathi blockade spoke again. "By sacred law, the convoy is denied passage. Turn away from the Orlith corridor or be removed." Nero closed his eyes for 1 second. They had fuel for 9 hours, heat for 6, food for less than 1. Behind them, the radiation storm that had burned their home systems clean was still crawling forward. Ahead of them waited the only safe passage through the region. And inside the corridor, the vast living guardians were already watching them as if they had brought a knife into a nursery. The first human ship arrived 3 minutes later. Not a destroyer, not a cruiser, not a gunship wrapped in the hard geometry of threat. It was a medical frigate with a cracked white hull, teal running lights, and a red emergency cross painted across its nose so large that even the starving children could see it through static. Then came another. Then 4 freighters dropped out behind them, heavy and ugly and civilian, their cargo spines still marked with shipping numbers. The Veyrathi blockade officer stared at the new arrivals. Captain Nero stared too. Every species in the region knew what humans sent when they meant to fight. These ships were not that. The lead medical frigate opened a channel before anyone could threaten it. A woman appeared on the screen, dark-skinned, close-cropped hair silvered at the temples, pressure suit collar open, surgical gloves sealed at her wrists. Behind her, people moved fast through narrow corridors. Not soldiers, nurses, engineers, medtechs dragging crates and folded stretchers. Her name tag read, Dr. Imano Konnkwo. She looked once at the Veyrathi warning glyphs, once at the dying convoy. Then she spoke like someone who had already made the only decision that mattered. "This is Stellar Mercy Medical Command. We are docking with the refugees." The Veyrathi officer's throat membranes flashed green in alarm. "You are entering a forbidden biological zone." Dr. Amina did not blink. "Then invoice me after the children are breathing." The channel split into 6 angry voices at once. The Veyrathi demanded withdrawal. The Kashari begged for docking priority. Human dispatchers started counting oxygen capacity, heat loss, organ failure, pediatric radiation markers, and hull fractures in the same clipped rhythm other species used for weapons targeting. That was the first thing Elder Sava Vey noticed from the blockade shrine. The humans did not sound frightened, they sounded busy. Elder Sava stood beneath the living bone arch of the command sanctum, her pearl gray skin reflecting the teal light of the corridor. 4 delicate hands rested on the sacred lattice. Through that lattice, she could feel the distant bodies of the Veyrath guardians moving outside, each one a mountain of instinct and memory. The convoy should never have come here. Not during larval season. Not with unknown biological signatures pulsing through their ships. Not with 18,000 desperate mouths and a history of broken promises behind them. The Orlith corridor was not a route on a map. It was a throat in the body of an ancient people. The Veyrath guardians migrated through it once every 72 years, carrying songs older than most governments. To contaminate it was not trespass. It was sacrilege. Thalin Orr, young blockade officer, stood beside her with his hands hovering over the denial controls. He was lean, armored, and terrified of showing it. "Elder," he said, "the human medical ships are ignoring the first boundary. I can see that. Should I raise the lattice?" Sava watched the lead human frigate angle toward the nearest refugee ship, a Kashari nursery transport whose hull temperature had dropped to lethal levels. Sacred law gave her the right to seal the corridor. Sacred memory gave her the reason. 2 centuries earlier, a plague had entered through a mercy exception. It had not killed the old first. It had killed the unborn. Veyrath larvae had gone silent inside their cradles across 3 migration cycles. A generation vanished before it hatched, so Sava had spent her life teaching one principle: pity must stop at the boundary of survival. Then Dr. Amina Okonkwo's ship extended a docking bridge toward the dying nursery transport. Fallon's throat glow trembled. Elder? Sava's fingers tightened over the lattice. Warn them once more. The warning went out in 11 languages, including Human Standard. Human response came back in 6 words. Medical emergency supersedes corridor etiquette. Fallon looked horrified. Sava looked at the screen and understood why half the galaxy feared humans even when they arrived without weapons. They did not need guns to be dangerous. Sometimes they carried conviction instead. On the human freighter Sun-Pulled Saint, Kenji Satoraman was upside down inside a cargo conduit when the order hit. Conversion priority changed, the shipboard AI announced. Cargo Bay 1 will become sterile triage. Cargo Bay 2 will become negative pressure isolation. Cargo Bay 3 will become pediatric warming. Cargo Bay 4 will become incubator support. Kenji banged his shoulder against the conduit wall. Incubator support? We don't have incubators. We have grain racks and a refrigeration spine older than my grandmother. Dr. Amina's voice came through his headset. Then, congratulations. Your grain racks are incubators now. Kenji slid out, boots catching the deck magnets with a hard clack. Around him, civilian crew sprinted through the bay. Someone cut cargo straps with a plasma saw. Someone else dragged crates of surgical gel across the floor. A medic slapped teal sterilization patches onto the walls while 2 volunteers unfolded stretchers between old pressure anchors. Kenji saw the problem in 3 seconds. Too much empty space, not enough clean power. Docking ports meant for ore containers, not dying civilians. Coolant lines that could keep fruit cold but not keep bodies alive. Filters rated for dust, not alien pathogens. And outside, 18,000 people waiting for miracles humans had not packed. He opened the engineering channel. Listen up. Strip every cargo rail from Bay 1 to Bay 3. I want heat loops laid under the deck plates in 12 minutes. Cut refrigeration from the food stores. A junior tech stared at him. That kills our reserves. Kenji pointed toward the forward screen where the refugee ships were blinking amber. There are reserves now. A laugh almost came through the channel. Not because anything was funny. Because the order was insane. And everyone knew humans had built half their rescue doctrine out of insane orders that worked if people moved fast enough. Mira Dane arrived on the freighter bridge with a comms hood tucked under one arm and 3 translation drones following her like nervous insects. She was younger than Amina, calmer than Kenji, and the only person aboard who had voluntarily read Veyrathi funeral law. Kenji, she said, you are about to cut into a sacred corridor blockade with a freighter. I'm converting grain racks into neonatal care. The sacred corridor can wait its turn. Mira gave him a look. That attitude is why they think we're barbarians. Kenji tossed her a cable spool. That attitude is why people survive us. The first docking hit harder than expected. The nursery transport Jala's Promise had lost stabilizers on its port side. When the human frigate made contact, the bridge screamed with metal tension. A docking collar buckled. 2 medics went down. Someone shouted that the pressure seal was not holding. Amina was already at the airlock. Her second, a small woman named Nurse Lena Voss with white hair braided under her helmet, grabbed her arm. Doctor, the Veyrathi are still broadcasting contamination warnings. Amina checked the pressure gauge. Are the Kashari broadcasting breathing warnings? Lena glanced at the patient feed. Pediatric oxygen saturation below 68% in forward hold. Then open it. The airlock opened. The smell came first. Not rot, not exactly. Hunger had a smell, but on the Kashari ship it mixed with coolant smoke, old metal, bitter antiseptic, and bodies that had been too crowded for too long. Amina stepped through into a corridor packed with civilians. The Kashari were thin, bronze-feathered, hollow-cheeked people. Some held children against their chests under thermal blankets. Some wore ration bracelets with no lights left on them. Many were too weak to stand, but when the humans entered, they tried to move aside. Amina lifted both hands. No one kneels. No one gives us space unless you are bleeding on it. The translation took half a second. A few Kashari stared. Then the first child collapsed. Amina caught him before his head struck the deck. The clinic war began. No guns fired, no missiles launched, no battle hymn played. But every human on the docking line moved like a combat unit. Lena cut away the child's outer wrap. Amina scanned the chest. Radiation burns along the lower ribs. Severe dehydration. Protein crash. Blood oxygen falling. Warm fluids. Half dose. Slow. His vessels will rupture if you flood him. A Kashari parent grabbed her sleeve. Take my ration. Take mine. Amina did not look away from the child. Keep it. You're next. I am not important. Amina's hand snapped up and caught the parent's wrist with surprising force. You are his ecosystem. Do not make me save him twice. The parent froze. Something changed in the corridor. Not safety. Not hope yet. Hope would have been too large and too cruel for that moment. But attention shifted. The refugees had expected pity, fear, or disgust. They had seen all three across 7 border stations and 2 relief hearings. What they got instead was a doctor angry on their behalf. Behind Amina, human medics unrolled heating mats. Kenji's crew pushed portable air scrubbers through the docking tube. A volunteer named Yara Singh painted triage marks on the floor in bright teal bands. Green for walking wounded. Amber for immediate. Red for critical. White for the dead. A Kashari elder watched the white band appear and made a small, broken sound. Yara heard it. She turned the strip over, hiding the color. Not yet, she said. The elder did not understand the words, but he understood the hand that covered the white. Then the first problem struck. Amina's patient convulsed. The child's bronze feathers flattened against his skin, his chest seized. His pulse, already weak, scattered across the monitor like spilled beads. Reaction, Lena said. To the fluid? No. To the base salts. Amina looked at the readout and cursed under her breath. The human emergency mix was wrong for Kashari renal chemistry. Safe for most carbon-breathing species. Dangerous for starving Kashari children whose mineral reserves had collapsed. Amina pulled the line out with one clean motion. The parent made a sound like a wound opening. Did you poison him? No, Amina said, already moving. But I almost did. That answer silenced the corridor more than denial would have. She opened the channel to Captain Nero. I need species-specific pediatric chemistry, blood salts, organ ratios, starvation protocols, anything. Nero's voice came back guarded. Those records are protected. Then unlock them. They contain reproductive and ancestral data. Your child on my floor has 90 seconds before his heart stops arguing with me. A pause. Then Nero said, sending partial record. Full. Doctor. Full. Captain. Or I guess, I'm guessing kills him. The file arrived 30 seconds later. Amina read it, adjusted the mix, and pushed the corrected dose. The child's pulse stumbled. Lena counted under her breath. 3 beats. 4. 5. Then the rhythm caught. The parent sagged so hard Yara had to hold them upright. Amina looked down the corridor where every Kashari eye had seen both the mistake and the correction. I will not pretend we know your bodies better than you do, she said. You give us truth. We give you care. That is the deal. Captain Nero heard the words from the bridge of Jala's promise. For the first time, he wondered if the humans might be dangerous in a different way than he had feared. Not because they never failed, because they admitted failure while still moving. On the blockade shrine, Thalon magnified the feed without permission. The human medical team had entered the refugee vessel in violation of 3 corridor statutes and 9 biological quarantine protocols. He knew the charges. He had recited them since Academy. But the humans were not looting. They were not hiding weapons. They were kneeling in spilled coolant and blood, taping heat packs to alien children, arguing over dosage conversions, and asking the refugees for knowledge instead of taking authority from them. Thalon looked away only when Elder Sava spoke. You are troubled. He straightened. No, Elder. You are glowing. His throat membranes dimmed in embarrassment. Sava touched the lattice. Outside, the Veyroth Guardians tightened their circle around the convoy. Their vast bodies moved in response to pulses only the elders could interpret. They sense contamination, she said. Thalon swallowed. Or distress. Sava turned to him. That distinction killed our children once. The rebuke landed cleanly. Thalon lowered his eyes. Yes, Elder. But he did not close the feed. On Jala's promise, Amina followed the second wave of patients deeper into the ship. Captain Nero met her at the entrance to the central hold. He stood very straight for someone who had not eaten a full ration in 12 days. A silver command shawl hung from one shoulder, scorched along the edges. Around his wrist was a child's empty ration bracelet. Dr. Okonkwo, he said. I am Captain Nero Kesh. Your ship is dying. So are my people. Then stop spending strength on ceremony and show me the worst section. For a moment, his broken facial crest lifted. Almost amusement, almost offense. Then another tremor passed through the hull. The corridor outside flashed green-white as a Guardian's fin slid past the ship, close enough to darken every viewport. The refugees moaned. Nero said, "This way." They passed through a hatch sealed with 3 physical locks and 1 hand-painted warning sigil. Amina noticed the guards first. 4 Kashari adults, all starving, all armed with cutting tools too weak to pierce a human suit, but held as if they mattered. Nero spoke sharply in his own language. The guards hesitated. Amina's scanner chirped. Behind the hatch were life signs. Thousands. Small. Faint. Rhythmic. She looked at Nero. "What is in there?" His face closed. "Our dead." Amina held up the scanner. "Your dead have heartbeats." Nero's hand moved toward the hatch panel, then stopped. That hesitation told her more than any confession. Another medic might have pushed. A soldier definitely would have. Amina did neither. "Captain, I don't need your secrets for curiosity. I need them for dosage, atmosphere, and survival math." Nero's eyes flicked toward the scanner. "These are not yours to examine. No patient is mine. That doesn't stop me from treating them. They are not patients. Everything with a failing pulse is a patient." The words hung between them. Behind the sealed hatch, the tiny heartbeats continued in synchronized waves. Then the ship shook so hard one of the Kashari guards fell sideways. Kenji's voice burst through Amina's calm. "Doctor, we have a problem. The Veirathi just raised partial lattice. Our docking angle is drifting." "How long?" "Before the caller tears. 14 minutes if the corridor behaves." "The corridor is not behaving." Amina looked at Nero. "Whatever is behind that door is affecting the Guardians." Nero's expression did not change, but grief moved under it like something trapped beneath ice. "Doctor," he said quietly, "if they know what we carry, they will burn us before the storm reaches us." Amina stepped closer. "Who will?" His answer came at the same moment the Veirathi warning returned across every speaker. "Unknown biological mass detected aboard refugee vessel. Contamination classification elevated. Human medical units must withdraw immediately." Nero's voice was flat. "Everyone." Miradane stood in the Sun-Pulled Saints converted comms bay, surrounded by sound wave glyphs, old Veirathi law texts, and live Guardian movement data. The adult Veirath were not speaking in words. That would have made everything easier, and the universe rarely gave easy things to dying people. They moved in loops, pressure wakes, flashes of green light through their nerve webs. Their gravity pulses bent dust lanes. Their fins created low-frequency vibrations across the hulls. Translation drones kept failing because half the message was physical force. Mira listened anyway. She had learned years earlier that language was not what a species said. Language was what they repeated when afraid. And the Guardians kept repeating one pattern. Approach. Withdraw. Circle. Pulse. Approach. Withdraw. Circle. Pulse. Not a hunting pattern. Not a territorial pattern. She called the blockade. Elder Sava appeared above the console, tall and severe in her bone-white mantle. "Human negotiator," Sava said, "your vessels are in violation." "Yes." That stopped her for half a breath. Mira continued. "They are. And your Guardians are not displaying predation behavior." Sava's black eyes narrowed. "You claim expertise in sacred migration? I claim expertise in panic." "Panic?" "The adults outside are searching for something. They approach the refugee ships, then retreat when our medical fields intensify. That is not attack preparation. That is conflict." Sava's throat membranes glowed green, slow, and controlled. "You observe shadows and call them emotion." Mira leaned toward the projection. "I observe repetition and call it language." Thalen, standing behind Sava, shifted. Mira saw it. Small movement. Young officer. Uncertain. "Good." She sent a data packet. "Look at pulse set 19. Then compare it to Veirathi morning chants after larval loss." Sava did not move. Thalen did. His eyes dropped to a side display. His throat glow flickered before he could hide it. Sava noticed. So did Mira. "What did you find?" Mira asked. Thalen looked to the elder for permission. Sava gave none. He spoke anyway, barely. "The interval is similar." Sava's upper hands tightened. "Similar is not proof. No, Mira said. But it is not nothing. Before Sava could cut the channel, the Shrine Archive spoke. It was not a person. It was an old legal intelligence grown into the living bone of the corridor station. Its voice carried no warmth, only precedent. Contamination caution remains mandatory. Archive warning. Mercy exception, cycle 801, resulted in larval mortality across 3 migration clusters. Repetition risk unacceptable. Sava's eyes did not leave Mira. You hear our dead speaking, human. Mira's answer came quietly. I hear your law remembering pain. That is not the same as knowing what is in front of us. The archive spoke again. Unauthorized passage may trigger sacred extinction protocol. Thalen flinched. Mira felt the air change through the screen. Sacred extinction protocol was not a metaphor. It meant the Guardians could be driven into a defensive swarm so violent it would tear every vessel from the corridor mouth. Sava ended the channel. For 6 seconds, Mira stared at the empty projection. Then she whispered, you heard it too. Kenji's voice entered her headset. Please tell me you negotiated us more time. I negotiated us more suspicion and 1 ancient death warning. I can work with suspicion. Ancient death warning is a little less convenient. A burst of static. A metallic shriek rolled through the freighter. Kenji cursed. Correction. The corridor rips docking collars. In Cargo Bay 2, the hospital had become something ugly and brilliant. Refugees lay in rows between former cargo anchors. Human medics moved from body to body with scanners, fluid lines, heated wraps, and pressure injectors. Kashari volunteers, too weak to stand for long, sat beside patients and held masks to their faces. The freighter's old grain racks had been rebuilt into stacked warming bays. Kenji had fed coolant tubes backward through emergency heaters, turning a storage system into a circulatory machine. It should not have worked. It worked at 61% efficiency. That was enough to keep children alive. Barely. Amina arrived with Captain Nero and stopped in front of the first sealed wound cradle. It floated in a magnetic sling, half organic, half machine, translucent oval pulsing amber white from within. Inside, something tiny and curled moved in slow rhythm. Not Kashari. Not anything Amina recognized. Around the cradle, 3 Kashari adults placed themselves between her and the device. One had burns across both arms. Another was shaking from hypothermia. The third could barely lift his head. Still, they guarded it. Amina lowered her scanner. I am not here to take them. The burned guard rasped. That is what the relief station said. Nero looked away. Amina understood the shape of it then, not the details. The shape. People who had been hunted often heard every offer as a door locking behind them. She turned to Lena. Bring a portable sterile field, no invasive scans. Visual, thermal, pulse only. Lena nodded and started setting up. Nero watched, suspicious. You will not cut the cradle? No. You will not sample tissue? No. Then how can you know what they need? Amina adjusted the scanner to passive mode. By starting with what I can learn without stealing anything. The burned guard's grip loosened on his tool. The cradle pulsed. Amina's screen filled with impossible data. The organism inside registered as partially electromagnetic. Its tissues held mineralized filaments. Its nervous activity produced tiny gravity fluctuations. The heart rhythm did not beat like a mammal or an avian or a reptile. It sang. Amina stared. Lena's voice dropped. Doctor? I see it. The pulse repeated. 3 short waves. 1 long. 3 short. 1 long. From Mira's comm channel, a pattern overlaid itself. Approach. Withdraw. Circle. Pulse. Amina called the freighter. Mira, I'm sending you cradle data. Send it now. The file transferred. For once, Mira had no immediate answer. Then her voice came back changed. Amina, that is not contamination. I know. No. Listen to me. That rhythm is almost identical to the Guardian distress loop. Amina looked at the tiny shape inside the cradle. Outside the hull, a moon-sized Vayrith Guardian passed so close that its green nerve web filled every viewport. The cradle pulsed brighter. The Guardian outside answered. Every screen in Cargo Bay 2 flashed with interference. Patients cried out. Medics grabbed equipment before it lifted under a sudden gravity ripple. Kenji shouted that Bay 4 had lost deck alignment. Somewhere, A pressure alarm began screaming. Amina did not look away from the cradle. "Narrow," she said. "What are they?" The captain's face hardened. "Our burden." That is not an answer. It is the only answer that kept them alive. Amina stepped closer, voice low enough that only he and the guards could hear. "Captain, if I am right, the beings outside are not hunting you. They are looking for these." Narrow's broken crest trembled. For the first time since she had met him, the refugee captain looked less like a leader and more like a man who had carried something too heavy for too long. He said, "And when parents find stolen children, Doctor, what do they do to the thieves?" The word stolen moved through the bay like a blade. One of the Kashari guards began to cry without sound. Amina understood then that the story was worse than fear. Fear could be argued with. Shame was harder. Before she could answer, the blockade lattice surged. The freighter lurched sideways. A docking alarm howled. Kenji hit the cargo bay channel. "All hands brace. The Veirathi are tightening the corridor wall." Amina grabbed the cradle sling before it struck the rack. A Kashari child screamed from a nearby stretcher. Narrow caught the child's mask with one hand and the cradle rail with the other. For 3 seconds, refugee captain and human doctor held the same fragile life between them. Then the ship steadied. Amina turned toward the nearest camera. "Elder Savave, you are watching this feed. I know you are. Lower the lattice." No answer. Amina's voice sharpened. "You have unknown fetal organisms aboard a failing refugee fleet, and your response is to crush the only sterile support system keeping them alive." The channel opened. Sava appeared, eyes black, throat glowing. "You admit the organisms are unknown. I admit they are fetal. I admit they are in distress. And I admit your guardians are responding to them." Sava's expression did not change, but Thalen behind her went very still. "These organisms are a threat to the corridor." Amina lifted the cradle into the camera's view, the tiny body inside curled tighter. "Look at it." Sava did not. "Doctor, look at it." The command cracked across the channel with such force that even Kenji stopped moving for half a second. Elder Sava's gaze lowered. The cradle pulsed. 3 short, 1 long. 3 short, 1 long. Sava's throat membranes flashed so bright green that Thalen flinched. Amina saw it. "You recognize that?" Sava cut the channel again. This time Mira did not whisper. She knows. Inside the blockade shrine, Elder Sava stepped away from the projection as if distance could change what she had seen. The larval pulse had been wrong. Not biologically wrong. Historically wrong. It belonged in the deep song nurseries of the Veirath migration heart. It belonged beneath guardian fins, inside living chambers grown from mineral and memory. It did not belong inside a Kashari refugee ship surrounded by famine and rust. Thalen spoke carefully. "Elder, that was a pre-hatch call." Sava turned. "Do not name what has not been proven. With respect, it matched the archive." The archive also records mimic parasites. The mimic plague had a rhythmic decay. Sava stared at him. He looked terrified. But he did not take it back. The archive intelligence stirred again beneath the floor. "Warning. Unauthorized mercy exception remains prohibited." Historical note. Elder Thomve permitted unverified biological transit. Result, 9 million unhatched larvae lost. The number filled the shrine. 9 million. Thalen looked down. Sava felt that number the way she always had. Not as information, but as ancestry. Her grandmother had sung names to empty shells. Her mother had grown up in a nursery hall where half the chambers never opened. Every Veirathi child learned to count grief before they learned law. Outside, the guardians tightened again. Their bodies moved closer to the refugee fleet. The shrine floor vibrated with their distress. Sava had spent 200 years inside laws written by grief. She had believed those laws were walls. Now a human doctor was holding up a cradle and asking whether the wall had become a knife. "Summon Captain Narrow," Sava said. Thalen hesitated. "Not the humans. The Kashari carried them here. The truth begins there." Narrow received the summons in Cargo Bay 2. He refused it. No, Amina wiped nutrient gel from her gloves and stared at him. "You do understand refusing questions from the species blocking us will not make them friendlier. They will ask how we got the cradles. Then they will decide we stole them. Then they will take them. And after that, they will decide whether any Kashari deserve to survive." "Did you steal them?" Narrow's feathers lifted in anger. "We saved them." Then say that. You say that like truth has protected us before. Amina had no easy answer. Easy answers were for people who had never watched paperwork kill patients, so she gave him a hard one. Captain, I can keep these larvae alive for maybe 8 hours in a converted cargo bay. Maybe. But if they belong to those guardians, they need something we cannot provide. Nero's eyes moved to the cradle. The song. Mira's voice entered through Amina's calm. He said song? Amina kept her gaze on Nero. What song? Nero's shoulders bent under the question. Our oldest records call it the first larval song. We thought it was myth, a corridor resonance, the sound that teaches them how to become whatever they become. Amina looked toward the viewport. Outside, the vast guardians circled like grief-made flesh. Nero continued, softer. 72 years ago, a Kashari harvest moon fractured near the outer Orolith path. Our ancestors found a nursery cluster adrift after a storm. Most of the adult guardians were gone. The cradles were failing. We did not know what they were. But they were alive. You took them. We carried them away from radiation. To return them. His face tightened. Yes. What happened? The plague years happened. The Veyrathi sealed the corridor. Then the border wars. Then famine. Then our archives burned. One generation told the next only this: protect the cradles until the corridor opens. By the time it opened, everyone with authority called them contamination. Amina said nothing. Nero looked at the empty ration bracelet on his wrist. My daughter was named Seely. She was 8. She believed the cradle in our quarters could hear her. She called it Little Dawn. His voice nearly failed on the name. Amina waited. Nero touched one blackened light on the bracelet. When our ration printer died, we found one nutrient wafer sealed inside the emergency kit. One. Selly took it before I saw her. I thought she had eaten it. He swallowed. She had not. She broke it into dust and mixed it into the cradle's heat gel because she thought Little Dawn would wake hungry. Lena turned away. The burned Kashari guard covered her mouth with both hands. Nero continued. She died 2 days later. Not from that wafer. Do not make it simple. She died because the ship was cold, because the storm was behind us, because every station told us to abandon what we carried. But when I found her bracelet beside the cradle, all its ration lights were empty. Amina looked at the glowing oval. The first genuine pain hit her then. Not shock, not anger, pain. The kind that came when she realized no single cruelty had made this crisis. It had been built by reasonable people making reasonable exceptions to mercy until 18,000 refugees had nowhere left to go. Nero's voice hardened again because grief could not be allowed to collapse him yet. We begged at 3 relief stations. The first wanted to dissect one. The second refused us water unless we left them behind. The third reported us to a quarantine fleet. One of the Kashari guards lowered her cutting tool. My sister died feeding heat to a cradle with her own blanket. Amina turned to the glowing rose. Nero said, if they know what we carry, doctor, they may call us thieves. Amina answered immediately. Then they'll have to go through my clinic first. That was not diplomatic language. It was not legal language. It was exactly what Nero needed. He nodded once. Open the channel. Elder Sava listened without moving. Nero told the story in pieces. The fractured nursery. The rescue. The lost archive. The famine. The relief stations. The sister who died warming a cradle. The daughter who named one Little Dawn and gave a final ration to a being she had never seen open its eyes. Mira layered data underneath his testimony. Passive scans. Pulse comparisons. Historical migration timing. Guardian distress loops. Larval neural patterns. Surviving Kashari ledger fragments. Old coordinates from the fractured harvest moon. Thalen ran the archive match himself, hands moving fast over the lattice. His face changed as each result locked into place. Not infection, not mimicry, not parasite. Veyrith larval class. Pre-hatch communal cluster. Viability declining. Corridor song required. He looked at Elder Sava. Match probability is 97.4. Sava's voice was almost inaudible. Run plague comparison. I did. And. Negative. Run it again. Thalen did. No one spoke while the archive worked. Across the shrine's open wall, the Orolith corridor shone with impossible beauty. Teal dust. Black distance. Green bodies moving through it like gods that had forgotten how to hope. The result returned. Negative. The archive intelligence spoke anyway. Warning. Data does not erase precedent. Thalen looked up. No, but precedent does not erase data. Sava closed her upper hands. For 200 years, her people had told the story of loss from one side. The plague, the sealed corridor, the empty nurseries, the children who did not hatch. Now another side stood before her, thinner, hungrier, wrapped in burned shawls, saying they had carried the lost children all this time. Sacred law had not protected the larvae. It had trapped them outside their own home. Thalen whispered, "Elder." Sava lifted one hand. He stopped. She opened the convoy channel. For the first time, she addressed Captain Nero not as contaminant bearer, not as trespasser, not as refugee. "Keeper Nero Kish," she said. Nero's eyes widened at the title. Sava continued, and each word seemed to cost her. "The blockade will pause for medical verification." The archive objected immediately. Pause unauthorized. Sava did not look away from Nero. Override by living elder authority. Override carries liability for extinction outcome. I accept. The shrine fell silent. Thalen stared at her. So did Mira. So did Nero. A sound passed through cargo bay 2, not celebration. Nobody had the strength for that. It was the sound of bodies letting go of one layer of fear. Amina turned away quickly and began giving orders. "Kenji, I need incubator loops stable enough to move. Mira, keep the Veyrathi on channel. Lena, start pre-transfer mapping. No invasive procedures. Nobody touches a cradle without Kashari consent." Kenji replied, "We are at 61% stability. I need 80. You need a proper hospital. I have you." That is emotional manipulation. That is command. He laughed once. Then he went back to breaking physics with spare parts. For 18 minutes, it almost worked. The Veyrathi lowered one section of the lattice. The Guardian swarm widened its circle. Human clinic ships began drawing the refugee vessels into a slow-moving formation. Medical frigates outside, civilian ships inside, freighters docked wherever life support had collapsed. On every human screen, the route appeared. Follow the migration current for 9,000 kilometers. Hold inside the teal shear. Keep thermal output low. Do not fire weapons. Do not broadcast distress at predatory frequencies. Do not panic if a moon-sized Guardian passes within hull-touching distance. Kenji read that last instruction twice. Do not panic. Very useful. Excellent engineering note. Mira said, "Panic changes respiration. Respiration changes atmosphere mix. Atmosphere mix affects the larvae." I was being sarcastic. I know. I was making it worse. On Jala's promise, Nero moved from stretcher to stretcher, telling his people what had happened. Some wept. Some did not believe him. One old Kashari woman asked if the Guardians would forgive them. Nero said, "I do not know." The honesty steadied her more than comfort would have. Amina checked Little Dawn's cradle personally. The larva inside had grown brighter since the lattice lowered, but its pulse remained strained. 3 short, 1 long. 3 short, 1 long. Searching. Not finding. Amina touched the outside of the cradle with 2 fingers. "You held on a long time." Lena glanced at her. "Talking to patients who cannot hear us. Best kind. They don't argue." A sudden alarm cut through the bay. Every cradle pulsed at once. Outside, the Guardian swarm changed formation. Mira saw it first from the comms bay. "Oh no." Kenji looked up from a power relay. "I hate that tone. The adult Guardians are accelerating. Toward us? Toward the cradles? That sounds good." It is not good. The data bloomed across her screens. The human incubator fields were creating a containment signature around the larvae. To human medicine, containment meant sterile protection. To Veyrath instincts, it looked like captivity. The adults had heard their children. Now they believed those children were trapped. Mira slammed the Veyrathi channel open. "Elder Sava, we need a Guardian calming protocol now." Sava's face appeared, shock already visible. "There is no calming protocol for nursery seizure. We are not seizing them. The Guardians do not understand your machines. Then help me explain." Mira tried the first translation before anyone could tell her not to. She mapped the cradle pulse directly into Guardian frequency, stripped out human machine noise, and broadcast a clean repeating pattern from the sun-pulled saint. 3 short, 1 long. 3 short, 1 long. For 2 seconds, the nearest Guardian slowed. Mira's eyes widened. Then the Guardian's nerve web flared violent green. The whole swarm surged forward. Kenji shouted, "What did you do?" Mira's face went pale. "I made it sound like the larvae were calling from inside a cage." The first Vareth opened its fins. The corridor bent. A gravity wave struck the outermost human freighter. Sun pulled Saint rolled 20 degrees before Kenji's emergency anchors caught. Cargo Bay 2 screamed. Patients slid against restraint fields. One warming rack tore loose and crashed into the deck. Kenji slammed both hands into a manual override. Medical Bay's report. Bay 1 had pressure. Bay 2 had injuries. Bay 3 had power fluctuations. Bay 4 had lost one incubator loop. Amina's voice cut through. "Define lost. Temperature falling. 7 cradles affected. Root power from engines. We need engines to stay in the corridor. Then root power from my frigate." Kenji froze. "Doctor, your frigate is stabilizing the docking spine. Root it. If I do that, your hull takes the next gravity wake without compensation." Amina looked through the viewport. A Vareth Guardian filled the sky, green nerve web blazing, huge enough to make the convoy look like dust. She said, "The larvae don't get a next wake if they freeze now." Kenji did not answer. He rerouted the power. On the blockade shrine, alarms flashed across the sacred lattice. Phelan's hands flew over controls. "The Guardians are entering retrieval swarm." Sava's face hardened with old terror. "If they strike the convoy, they will shatter the ships." "Can we command them away?" "No. Not while they hear larvae in distress." "Then lower the lattice fully. Let the convoy enter the migration flow." Sava turned on him. "And if contamination readings are incomplete?" The plague comparison was negative. "Incomplete is not negative." Phelan's glow flared. "Elder, with respect, we are using caution to crush children." The words shocked them both. Sava stared at him. He bowed his head, but he did not apologize. Outside, the second gravity wake hit. This one caught Dr. Amina's medical frigate, the Mercy of Lagos, along its exposed side. The ship bent. Not enough to break. Enough to scream. Inside the docking corridor, 3 human medics were thrown against the wall. One lost suit pressure. Lena sealed the tear with her own palm patch before the medic could bleed vacuum. Amina was in Bay 4 when the lights went red. The incubator loop had failed. 7 cradles dimmed. Little Dawn was one of them. Captain Nero reached the bay at the same time she did. He saw the fading light and made a sound no translator touched. Amina grabbed the cradle and checked the thermal readout. Too low. Falling fast. "Manual heat," she ordered. Lena looked at her. "With what?" Amina stripped the thermal lining from her own pressure suit. Lena understood and began doing the same. Then Yara Singh, then 2 Kashari guards. Then Nero removed his command shawl, the last ceremonial sign of his authority, and wrapped it around Little Dawn's cradle. One by one, people began giving warmth to things that were not their species. The ship shook again. A human engineer in the doorway shouted, "Doctor, command says the Mercy of Lagos has hull fractures. They need you back aboard." Amina did not move. "Tell them to seal compartments. You are the medical commander. I am looking at the patient. Which one?" She looked around the bay. At the human medic with a bleeding forehead. At the Kashari father holding a mask to his child. At Nero's hands pressed against the cradle. At the larva dimming inside. All of them. The engineer ran. Mira's voice arrived, strained and surrounded by static. "Amina, the Guardians won't stop. The incubator fields read as cages. My clean pulse made it worse. I stripped out too much. What do they need to hear? Not just the larvae. The care around the larvae. The family context. The old rhythm." Nero looked up. The Kashari cradle song. Mira heard him. "Captain, sing it." Nero froze. "What?" "Sing what your daughter sang to Little Dawn." His face went rigid. "That is a family mourning song. Then it carries what the clean signal lacked." Outside, another gravity wake rolled toward them. Amina looked at Nero. "Captain." Nero closed his eyes. When he began, his voice was rough. No translator touched the song at first. It came through as a low Kashari melody, uneven from hunger, bent around sounds human throats could not make. Then the Kashari guards joined. Then the parent who had begged Amina to take their ration. Then an old woman on a stretcher. Then voices from other refugee ships, one by one, thin and cracked and alive. Mira captured the rhythm, not the notes. There it was, 3 short. 1 long. 2 rising. A pause shaped like waiting. The larvae answered. But the incubator loop failed again before Mira could broadcast. Kenji saw the heat valve drop from 73% to 40. Bay 4 heat loop is choking. A tech shouted, "Remote actuator is dead." Kenji looked at the schematic. The valve was outside the sealed maintenance spine, between the freighter's inner hull and the docking collar, exactly where corridor shear had already started leaking through microfractures. He opened Amina's channel. "I can hold the heat loop manually." "No, that was fast. You are in a safe compartment. Which is why I hate leaving it, but the remote is dead and Little Dawn's heat drops in 40 seconds. Kenji, you said you had me." The channel went quiet for half a second. Then Amina said, "Suit sealed. Tether doubled. Lena monitors your vitals. Already moving." Kenji entered the maintenance spine with a tool harness, a cracked visor, and the expression of a man who had spent his whole life insulting machines because he loved them too much to trust them. The corridor leak looked like teal fire. It curled through the fracture, carrying glittering dust that sparked against his suit. His radiation counter climbed. His pressure suit screamed at him to retreat. He ignored it and crawled toward the valve. The manual wheel had warped. Of course it had. Kenji wedged one boot against the frame, hooked both gloved hands around the wheel and pulled. Nothing. He pulled harder. The valve moved 1 centimeter. Bay 4 heat climbed 2%. Lena's voice snapped in his ear. "Your left glove seal is degrading. So is my patience." "Kenji, I heard you." He wrapped his arm through the wheel and used his whole body as a brace. The heat loop opened another 3 centimeters. Inside Bay 4, Little Dawn's cradle brightened faintly. Nero saw it. So did Amina. Kenji's suit alarm went from warning to emergency. "Left glove breach in 30 seconds, Lena said. Kenji gritted his teeth. "Tell the larva I am expecting a thank you card." Amina's voice came through low and hard. "Hold for 10. I can do 10. Mira broadcast, not the clean pulse. Not the Veyrathi archive tone. She sent the Kashari family cradle rhythm woven through the first larval song, with the larvae's own heartbeat inside it, and the rough human incubator noise left deliberately in place. She let the Guardians hear the machines, the heat loops, the failing filters, the human breathing masks, the Kashari voices, the whole imperfect sound of strangers trying to keep children alive. For 1 terrifying second, both species' signals fought each other. Then the larvae answered. The first larval song changed again. Not Kashari, not Veyrath, both. The adult Guardians stopped. Not slowed. Stopped. A body larger than a continent held perfectly still in the teal current. Fins spread, green nerve web flickering. Then it folded its vast shape around the convoy without touching it. A second Guardian stopped. Then a third. The swarm's attack formation broke apart. Mira saw the pattern change across every screen. Approach, hold, shelter, pulse. Approach, hold, shelter, pulse. She sent the translation to Sava. "Elder," she said, voice breaking, "I think they understand." Sava did not answer. She had one hand pressed over her own throat membranes, which glowed with the same rhythm as the cradles. On the shrine floor, Thalon moved. Sava saw his hand reach for the lattice. If he lowered it without permission, he would break sacred law in front of every Elder archive. His career would end. His family name might end with it. The young officer looked at the screen where human medics stood inside living corridor dust, holding warmth around Veyrath larvae while their own alarms screamed. Then he lowered the lattice. Not fully. Only 12 seconds. Enough. The corridor opened. Kenji was still locked around the valve when the ship surged forward. The movement slammed him against the maintenance frame. His left glove tore. Teal dust touched his skin. He screamed once, short and furious, then tightened his arm harder around the wheel. Bay 4 heat rose to safe threshold. Lena shouted, "Kenji, release and retreat." Not until the cradles cross. Amina looked at the heat readout, then at Little Dawn's pulse. "Kenji, they crossed." He let go. The emergency tether snapped him backward into the spine as the valve locked in place behind him. When they dragged him into the safe compartment, his left hand was blistered green-white under the glove, but he was conscious. Lena cut the glove away. Kenji looked at his own burned fingers. That had better be sacred dust. Lena glared at him. It is biologically active corridor residue. So sacred dust with paperwork. She almost smiled. Then the radiation storm arrived. The Veyrathi window had moved the convoy into the migration current, but the storm behind them accelerated along the outer boundary faster than projected. It struck the back of the corridor mouth as a sheet of white static, burning through weak shields and turning old hull paint to vapor. The last refugee ship in formation, a patched family hauler called Seven Ashes, lost engine control and began drifting out of the protected lane. Kenji saw it from a medical cot, one hand sealed in emergency gel. Seven Ashes is falling back. Amina checked the medical overlay 92 life signs. Mira added 3 cradles aboard. The nearest Guardian was too far. The lattice window was closing. The Mercy of Lagos had hull fractures and no compensation power. Amina opened the channel to her ship. Mercy of Lagos, detach and intercept Seven Ashes. Lena grabbed her arm. Doctor, Mercy can't take another wake. I know. You're aboard the freighter. Your command crew is on that ship. I know. For the only time that day, her voice softened. Tell them to go. The Mercy of Lagos detached. It looked small against the corridor. A white medical frigate with teal lights, red cross scorched black along one side, moving with half its thrusters and no right to survive. It reached Seven Ashes just as the radiation front touched the hauler. Instead of pushing it, Mercy rolled beneath it and opened its emergency docking spine like a broken wing. The impact cracked both ships. Kenji struggled upright. They're locked but not moving. Amina saw the numbers. Not enough thrust, not enough time. Then Captain Nero spoke over the refugee channel. All Kashari ships with remaining engine heat turned toward Seven Ashes. Amina looked at him. You'll break formation. Nero's eyes stayed on the screen. You told us not to make you save us twice. Across the convoy, dying ships turned. Not far. Not fast. Some had only maneuvering jets. Some vented precious air to create thrust. Family ships, school transports, market barges, all of them angled toward the fallen hauler. Thin lines of force linked them. Tow cables. Magnetic hooks. Old mining tethers. Human freighters joined them. Then something unexpected happened. A Kashari child on oxygen, the same child who had asked whether the Guardians would eat them, reached from her stretcher and pressed a manual routing key her father could not reach. It gave her ship's last reserve battery to the tow grid instead of life support heating. Her father panicked. No! The child's voice was tiny behind the mask. They saved us. We pull. Amina saw the transfer. Restore heat to that ship. Kenji, half conscious on the cot, lifted his good hand and pointed at a secondary line. Use our surgical reserve. Lena snapped. That reserve is for exposure casualties. Kenji looked at his blistered hand. I volunteer as the casualty who complains later. Lena transferred the power. The child's heat came back. The tow grid strengthened. The convoy pulled. The radiation front took the outer hulls first. Amber lights vanished under white glare. A child screamed over an open channel. Someone prayed. Someone cursed. Someone sang the Kashari cradle song, and then 5 more voices joined, and then 50. Mira kept the rhythm open. The larvae answered. The adult guardians moved. All 6 of them. They folded their bodies around the rear of the convoy and took the radiation front across their own fins. Green light exploded through the corridor. The shrine shook. Sava staggered. Thalin caught the lattice with both hands and held the opening past its safe limit. His palms burned against the living controls. Thalin, Sava shouted. He grimaced. 12 seconds was not enough. The lattice accepted his blood heat. The opening held. 7 ashes crossed. Mercy of Lagos crossed. The last tow cable snapped through the corridor boundary and whipped away into white fire. Then the storm hit the closed lattice behind them and vanished into teal distance. For a moment, nobody spoke. Not because the ships were peaceful. They were not. Alarms still screamed. Patients still bled. Filters still failed. Human medics were exposed to corridor bioresidue. Kashari ships had hull burns. The Mercy of Lagos was venting atmosphere from 3 compartments. But the convoy was inside the Oralith corridor, alive. And around them, the Veyrath Guardians no longer circled like hunters. They formed a ring. A moving wall of living night and green light. The corridor passage took 9 hours, and none of those hours were quiet. In the first hour, A Kashari elder named Vora crashed from delayed radiation shock. She had been one of the first to help hold warming wraps around the cradles, and when her pulse dropped, 3 human medics moved toward her at once. She pushed them away with surprising strength. "No," she rasped. "Children first." Amina knelt beside her. "Vora, I have enough hands for you and children. You do not have enough medicine. That is not your calculation. It is my body." Amina looked at the dosage count. Vora was right. There were 2 doses of the correct anti-radiation binder left in that bay. One would stabilize Vora. One was already marked for a 12-year-old with internal burns. The old woman saw the answer on Amina's face. She smiled faintly. "You are honest. I like that. It is inconvenient." Amina hated her a little for making the choice clean. Then Captain Nero arrived and placed a cracked metal vial in Amina's hand. "Our ancestral emergency stores," he said. "We saved it for reproductive shock. It may bind radiation." Amina scanned it. Old. Unstable. Possibly useful. Possibly poisonous. "Where did you get this?" "From the chamber we refused to open for you." Amina looked at him. Nero lowered his eyes. "We are learning." Amina split the dose with Lena, adjusted it with human stabilizers, and gave Vora half. The elder seized once. Then her pulse settled. The 12-year-old received the last binder. Both lived. In the 3rd hour, the Guardian ring shifted too close to the sun-pulled saint. A fin larger than a continent moved through the teal current, not attacking, only correcting its formation. The gravity wake caught the freighter's clinic bays and pulled one side of the ship down as if space itself had become heavy. Patients lifted from stretchers despite restraint fields. Cradles tilted. A portable lung chamber slid toward an open equipment shaft with Thomas Elian inside it, unconscious and sealed. Kenji was not supposed to stand. He stood anyway. His left hand was useless, wrapped in gel and trembling. He grabbed a rail with his right and shouted for the Kashari volunteers nearest the chamber. "Hook the yellow latch." Not the red. The red vents him. 3 Kashari moved. One was too weak and fell. Another caught her. The third, a teenage boy with a cracked breathing mask, threw himself across the sliding chamber and jammed his arm through the yellow latch. The chamber stopped 6 centimeters from the shaft. Kenji reached them with a magnetic clamp and locked it down. The boy looked at Thomas inside the glass. "He is one of yours." Kenji clipped the clamp with his teeth and said, "Today, yes." The boy nodded as if that answered everything. In the 5th hour, Mira's signal began to decay. Not because the song was wrong, because the convoy was changing. Every time a cradle stabilized, its pulse joined the rhythm. Every time a refugee ship lost power, its signal dropped out. Every Guardian adjustment shifted the resonance environment. Mira had to keep weaving the sound by hand, second by second, because no AI could understand grief as a live variable. Her eyes burned from the translation hood. Sava stayed linked from the shrine. "You are losing the lower interval," Sava said. "I know. Do not stretch the Kashari rhythm there. It will read as distress. I know. You are doing it anyway. I only have 3 stable channels." Sava was silent for a beat. Then she opened a restricted Veirathi Elder Band. A 4th channel appeared on Mira's board. The archive immediately objected. "Unauthorized sharing of migration harmonics." Sava said, "Logged." Mira looked at her through the projection. "That band is sacred." Sava's throat glow dimmed and brightened. "So are children." Mira used the 4th channel. The song held. In the 7th hour, Little Dawn's cradle opened one outer membrane. Not hatching. Not yet. Just responding. The whole base stopped. Even Amina stopped. A tiny filament unfolded inside the translucent shell, green-white and delicate as a vein of light. It touched the inner wall of the cradle. Nero moved closer, slowly, as if sudden motion might frighten it back into darkness. His daughter's bracelet hung from his wrist, all its ration lights dead. The filament pulsed against the cradle wall. Nero whispered, "Seely was right. You were hungry." Amina checked the readings. Not hungry now. Then her scanner chirped. Little Dawn's improved pulse was stabilizing 6 nearby cradles. The larva was acting as an anchor signal for the cluster. Amina laughed once under her breath. Nero looked at her. "What?" "She fed the one who is now helping feed the others." He looked down at the bracelet. For a long moment, he could not speak. When the convoy finally reached the inner sanctuary current, the corridor opened like dawn. Teal mist thinned into a vast chamber of quiet stars. Mineral reefs floated in slow spirals. Streams of green light moved between them, guided by the adult Veyrath guardians. The refugee ships entered one by one, scarred, patched, trembling with failing systems, but alive. The guardians surrounded them, not as jailers, as family. Inside Cargo Bay 4, Little Dawn's cradle brightened until every face around it glowed amber white. Nero lowered his forehead to the cradle surface. Amina watched the scan stabilize, temperature rising, pulse strengthening, neural song expanding. Lena wiped condensation from her visor. "Doctor," she said, "the 7 critical cradles are recovering." Amina nodded once. Then her knees almost gave. Nero caught her elbow. For a moment, neither of them mentioned it. Then he said, "You are contaminated." Amina checked the warning flashing across her wrist display. "So are you. I was already condemned. Then we match." He looked at her, and for the first time his expression held something dangerously close to hope. Elder Sava appeared on the bay projection. Her mantle was no longer perfectly arranged. One of her hands trembled. Behind her, Thalin stood with burned palms wrapped in emergency gel. Sava looked at Nero, then at the cradles, then at Amina. "Keeper Nero Kesh," she said, "by authority of the Migration Shrine, your convoy is granted protected passage." Nero's face folded. He tried to answer, failed, then placed one hand over Little Dawn's cradle. Sava continued. "And by witness of the Veyrath Guardians, the Kashari are recognized as cradle keepers under sacred bond." The Kashari in the bay began to react one by one. A guard dropped her cutting tool. An old man covered his face. A child on a stretcher asked if that meant they could sleep. Lena laughed once through tears and said, "Yes, sweetheart. That is exactly what sacred bond means." Sava turned to Amina. "Dr. Okonkwo." Amina straightened as much as her exhausted body allowed. "Yes, Elder. I believed mercy at the boundary was how extinction begins." Amina said nothing. Sava's throat glow pulsed with visible effort. "Today I witnessed mercy as organized power. I witnessed it hold a fleet together where law alone would have left wreckage." Amina glanced around the cargo bay. At Kenji's ugly heat loops. At mirror signal overlays. At Kashari hands wrapped around Veyrath cradles. At human medics shaking from exposure and still checking pulse lines. "Mercy is not soft," Amina said. "It just has different logistics." For the first time, Thalin smiled. It was small. It was enough. The aftermath was not clean because rescue never is. The Kashari were granted sanctuary, but sanctuary came with grief, quarantine, hearings, and the long process of teaching two peoples how to stand near each other without flinching. The Veyrathi elders opened the old plague archives and found the missing pages that proved a nursery cluster had vanished in the same storm Nero's ancestors had recorded. The Kashari opened their burned family ledgers and found generations of cradle keepers who had died without ever knowing whether they were protecting children, gods, or a promise no one else remembered. Dr. Amina's clinic ship stayed for 32 days, not because they were ordered to, because moving hospitals do not leave when the dramatic part ends. Kenji rebuilt the Sun-Pulled Saints cargo bays 3 times before he admitted they were no longer cargo bays. Refugee children began calling Bay 2 the warm room. Lena pretended not to like the name and painted it over the entrance anyway. Mira and Sava built the first shared dictionary between Kashari cradle songs and Veyrath migration pulses. The first entry was not peace. It was still here. Thalin or lost his formal blockade posting for lowering the lattice without full elder approval. Then the Guardians marked his burned palms with green light and refused to let another officer take his place. Sacred law adapted. Slowly. Painfully. But it adapted. On the 33rd day, the Mercy of Lagos finally powered its damaged engines. Amina stood at the viewport before departure, watching the sanctuary glow around the convoy. Little Dawn's cradle was no longer in Bay 4. It had been moved to a living nursery reef, surrounded by Kashari singers, Veyrathi elders, and 6 enormous guardians whose fins shaded it from hard starlight. Captain Nero joined her with his daughter's empty ration bracelet still around his wrist. "She would have liked you," he said. Amina looked at the nursery reef. "No," she said. "She would have corrected my bedside manner." Nero's crest lifted. "Yes, she would have." Then he stepped away from the viewport and crossed to the nursery threshold. No one stopped him. Not Sava, not Thalon, not the Guardians whose immense shadows covered the reef. Nero removed the empty bracelet from his wrist and placed it beside Little Dawn's cradle. For a moment, the dead ration lights reflected nothing. Then Little Dawn pulsed. Amber white, green, teal. One by one, the bracelet's empty lights glowed back, not with food, not with power, but with the reflection of a life Seelie had helped keep alive. Outside, the human medical frigates turned toward open space, scarred and exhausted, their red crosses reflected in thousands of newborn lights. Behind them, the tiny civilian ships were no longer trapped at the mouth of the corridor. They moved inside a ring of cosmic beasts, protected like something precious. And in the largest nursery reef, Little Dawn opened its first luminous fin.